Okay. As we were saying before, for a while around the table there were 7 people, and reminded me of the parasha, right? The 7 good cows, right? Now I'm talking about what's on the plates. I'm not, right, but then there were 8, right? But Lama says something very interesting about the 7 good cows, right? But Tirana ba'ahu, they were grazing together. It doesn't say that by the 7 bad cows. And now by the Sheva Shibolim that were good, Olos Bekona Echad. They all had the same stem, right? Which, imagine what that looked like. 7 Shibolim, 1 stem. What does that look like? Menorah.
Whoa, see that?
Yeah. Right? Right? So, and it doesn't say that by the 7 bad ones. They weren't Bekona Echad. Right? So in the good, there's the 7, which we know is the 7 major kochos of the cosmos, but there's something in addition. There's the achdus, and that's what the 8th is. The 8th, we say, is l'mala min hateva. It's the kesher elyon that holds it all together, right? Right? And the
Morty was the
Morty.
yeah.
Well, no, but here, so now in the menorah. So that's l'mala min hateva, right? And that's l'mala min hateva, which is what the Torah is relative to chochmas chitzonius, which describe the teva. Right, as I say, I mean, I go with the science. I'm going with the science, whatever. Once upon a time that meant something, right? But there's the 7 chochmas describe the teva, and then there's the achdus between them, which you can't see in the branches. And that's the Torah, Istako Baraiso Bara'ama. That's the Shorish Elyon from which everything comes. You get to the Torah, you get to the Plemius, right? You get to the Achdus. And that's what it says, by the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, Miksha Achas. It was Miksha. Miksha Tease. It was made out of a solid piece of gold. All the 7 branches were all made from a solid piece of gold. So it's interesting, Chazal say that Moshe Rabbeinu was niskashe, b'maisa menorah. He found it difficult until B'tzalel miraculously made it after he tried, and without getting into all the amkus of the different shittas in the medrash of how the menorah ultimately got made and how that represents our different relationships with the Torah. But the point is like this: the menorah being difficult is alluded to in the word miksha, that it was all made out of a solid piece of gold. Right? Because the Torah, reaches the things that are kosher on the human intelligence. The human intelligence can't reconcile Yediyah and Bechira, right? Ishtadlus and Bitochen, Tzadik v'Ralo, right? And that's what the Achdus of Noah represents, that all these things that we see as separate branches that will never meet, it's all Miksha Achas, and that Miksha Achas is kosher on the human intelligence, right? The physical intelligence is not savable. Right, and the human intelligence is what the Yevonim, as a nation, supposedly at the time, were the most developed in. But this is where it falls short. If you're they're just in branches. They're not in shirish. Right, and the end of Chanukah, generally speaking, is that the ore of the shirish shines through the branches, and we'll talk about this in a slightly different vein in just a minute. Right, but the ore of the shorish shines through, and that's why Hanukkah's 8 days. The 8th day is connected the shorish per se, right? That's why it's called Zos Hanukkah. That the laning is how all the karbanos mostly are added up to one achdus. That's the laning, and there's a mitzvah to do during the yom, and that's to take all the psilas of all the 8 days and burn them together. So it's the 8th day of Hanukkah is not 7 and yet another. The 8th day is connected that the achdus comes out, the achdus per se, and that's the end of Ora Hanukkah is that the ore of the Shoresh Elyon shines through the branches, shines in the branches, right? Which they don't have. They see the branches, but they don't see the Shoresh, right? And that's the Mila of Torah over all the other Chochmas Chitzonius. It's one of its many Milas. Right, is that it is truly the one chokhmah that's koilol everything. Torah Shem Tamima, it's not missing anything. Right? All the things that branch out to, he said that the human mind can't be soivel, how they're not a contradiction. The Torah is koilel all these things. It's all nichlon in the emes of the Torah. Right? So that's the achdus that there is over there. And so we come here, the achdus that is between the good and the good. By the bad, it says yispordu kol polei oven. Evildoers, knesia she is shem shamayim sofel iskayim. A convergence that's the shem shamayim, it will endure. So knesia shem shamayim ain't sofel iskayim. Right, the shem shamayim, which is the or hatayra, right, the or of malchus shamayim, which is called zois, right. Zois is the kaidu, it's the midah of shechina, kaidu of malchus. Right, that shines out. Right, there's that's the or of the invisible essence. So it's also the word for essence. What is the essence? No one knows. Physically. You know what something looks like. You know its properties. What is the thing in itself? It's a mystery. The thing in of itself is the divrei Torah that's connected to that thing. That's the thing itself. The divrei Torah from which that thing comes from. That's the zois. That's the thing itself, right? So I just want to thank Donnie for having this night of achdus. The 7 that leads into 8, but it's not really 8. It's 7 and achdus, right? Which one of you is the achdus? You'll fight it out, right?
No, you want to know. He was.
You fight it out, right?
No, you want to know.
Right?
No, it's a good challenge. He was 7. Right. He went out, and he walked in. So what's the mystery?
No, that's the whole point. The achdus is evasive. It's invisible.
Oh.
Right?
So it could be me, you're saying.
Right.
It could even be me.
Well, let's not. Let's stay connected to reality.
Right. Right. No, and that's the poskim have already agreed, right, that there is no sudas mitzvah on Chanukah out Chanukah, but that but it's already minhag yisrael laharbos ksas the Ramah brings, and the poskim say come and say divrei Torah, because the pshat is it's an amazing thing, right? A sudas mitzvah is a mitzvah because the circumstances around it make it a mitzvah. Right, but they say you make it a mitzvah. You make it by saying divrei Torah. It's our job to bring out the or hama'ached. When you bring out that or hama'ached, that's the achdus, and that's what happens. Later in the Torah, later in this week's parsha. So first, the achdus is alluded to in the good, and then when Yosef's brothers come, v'hachen tzvoach v'hachen, right? Put out good meat, and that's the right. But it's done, but kavanah tchila, not because there's a chiyuv and therefore you do it. You do it and you bring out the or that makes it a mitzvah. And when we raise the level at the table here, we'll be zocha to that, and we'll try to do that right now. But it's also alluded to also in the mitzvah of ner Chanukah. It's ner ish ubeisai, right? That even though you could be mahader, but the ikra mitzvah is one candle for everyone. Now it says ish, and I see over here no one's drinking except for me, right? And whatever. And I don't know what you plan to you're
whatever.
Right?
No one was drinking.
There's no amount of alcohol that makes you an ish.
Right?
No one.
Okay.
No one except him.
And having just one person drink, that's not making achdus. It says vayishtu imo, by that same sunnah that he made to make achdus with his brothers. Vayishkaru imo, right? I don't know, what are you guys trying to gain? They found a new mayor for South Bend already. Drink.
That's really good. I'm going to say that from now on. What are you, the mayor of South Bend?
Anyway.
Never guys being a little too. Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
That was good.
Yeah.
I don't understand the connection.
No.
What, mayor of South Bend?
I know who he is. I don't understand the connection to what Rabbi Becha.
Afterwards.
All right, let's record. I'll tell you after.
Alone kids with no kids.
Alone kids.
Alone with no kids around. We'll explain to you.
All right, so Rosh Hashanah should be, we should stay, ba'achdus, and but the ora achdus of the achdus of Torah, the mixture of the menorah, right? The real shorish elyon that's makasher everything. All right, and that so I want to bring this more into the vein of the human experience. I've heard a lot of talk tonight saying about Zaydim Biad Oskei Sorasecha. Right, seems to be which indeed that line of the Alanissim requires some explanation. How is it different than Rishonim Biad Tzadikim that we mentioned right before? Rishonim Tzadikim. So now what have you come and what have you added by saying Zaydim Biad Oskei Sorasecha? That's not nichlal already in Rishonim Biad Chad Tzadikim. Right? So there's the term Zaydim, right? It has a more general meaning than people in Woodmere. It's bigger than that, right?
Oh,
right,
ooh,
right.
If you need a knife,
Right.
I'm long lived.
I know. It wasn't you. It's referring to something.
that means there's no octa.
Rebbe is giving a loan life for the next month. He can live off of this moment.
Wow.
Right.
Oh.
You didn't say cedars, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
How long do you feel re-energized?
Thanks, felt great. Thank you for coming back.
No, I was referring to something earlier in the evening before your arrival. Right. Okay. Now, the term is, Zad is Miloshin Mezid. Ki Yozid Ishareu Lahargo Ba'arma. It focuses on intent, right? Where you're actively thinking. Right, and it's interesting. There's a maral that points out, Gemara in the Sanhedrin by the Sugi of Ben Saramora, but that points out that he has to be called an ish, and ki yazid ish, that already the klei azera are cooking, cooking. The maral says thinking, the koch of machshava. It's called, to cook because you develop an idea, you refine it, and then that's, it's you understand, tam e Torah, like tam, shulchan aruch muchan lechol, right? So that's as it says, vayozed Yaakov Nazid, right? What does that have to do with being amazed? So the Maharal says that the process of thought is also called to cook because that's to develop and to refine and to bring out tam, like my time and also tam, right? So Zaydim goes on machshava, right? And that's very interesting that a Russia, right? Doesn't have to necessarily be a mazid in the full sense. Because a person is called a Russia if he can't be mizgaber over his taiva, right? As long as he still was aware that it's asur, right? So he's still technically amazed, even though that's not really what he wants to do, right? Everyone knows the famous Rambam in Hilchos Gerushin. Right, that Kofar Sachiyoma wrote Sani, but he doesn't want. Okay, deep down he does want. Just the Yitzhar is Kofar, and we, and Chazal have already said a cloud. Tzadikim libam bershusam, rishoyim bershus libam. A person who has no self-control, Russia, no self-control is also called a Russia, right? So why is it called a Russia? No self-control because he brought himself into that state, and that's different from someone who's, a zod, a real mazer. That it's not that he can't control himself. He's aware that's also, but he can't control it. This is, there is intent. He invests real machshava into it, right? And that's why the converse is, of the Zaydim is not, tzadikim. That's Rishonim versus tzadikim.
Zaydim is worse than Rishonim.
Zaydim is worse than Rishonim. There is active intent. So it's a shita. It's not that he's not, he knows it's wrong, but he can't control it. No, it's a shita. It's planned out. It is, right? Right. So now, so that the hepech of that is not a tzaddik. That is oskei sarasecha, right? So so that should ring a bell. That's the bracha that we make, on. In the morning, la'asok b'divrei Torah, right? Why not lilmod Torah? What's la'asok, right? La'asok, right? So Asik is something that you're engaged in, right? Your mind is totally occupied in it, right? And that's a whole nother level of Torah, right? Is that your whole it's not like you understand the directive what to do, but it takes up your whole mind, right? And that's what we say after Ravna Hashem Elokeinu divrei torascha befinu, right? It should be sweet, it should be delicious. That means you should be totally engaged, right? Totally asuk, right? Your mind is totally there, right? Your mind is totally there, right? It's interesting, and when you go right into it and say vaharevna, right? It should be delicious. So of course, if it's delicious, of course it's easier to be connected. But it's an interesting idea in halacha. There's something called misasik, right? But misasik means that actually your mind was preoccupied on something else. Like you thought that this is talush, but really it's connected and you lift it up on Shabbos. That's misasik, right? Right, so your mind was totally not there. That's even less than shogeg. That's less than, you're potter from korban chatas. That's less than shogeg. Shogeg, you know what you're doing, right? Here you were totally unaware, right? That's called misasik. Your mind was elsewhere, right? You did not. You were totally unaware. So the Gemara says, halacha. There's no such thing as misasik b'chalavim va'arayos shekein nene, right? There's no such thing as you're with the wrong woman. You didn't realize it's not your wife, right? Or you're eating chalev. There's not, because shekein nena. It's not shaykh that you didn't have your mind on it, right? Because you're enjoying it, right? Right, and that's what David said. Lots of it should be delicious. Should be shekein nena. There should never be any hesech hadas. Because if you're enjoying it, your mind and heart is there. If you're enjoying it. It's impossible to have misasik in a negative sense that your head is elsewhere totally, right? So it's lasso to Torah that should be there, right? Totally engaged, right? And this goes back to that the Kayadur, the Ora Torah, right, is connected the Or of Torah Shabbat Peh, which is the Torah that's in the people, as opposed to the Torah that's in books. And we know Chanukah is a Yom Tov of Torah Shabbat Peh. There's no Megillas Antiochus that's Kisvei HaKodesh, right? The whole thing, Esther was Sofa Nisim Shnitnu Li Kosev. Right? This is the Yom Tov of Torah Shabbat Peh, which is the Or of Torah. It's contained in the people. It's not in the books. It's in the people. And that's what the Or Menorah represents. Now, it's an amazing thing. So the Or Menorah was miksha, right? That means even the secrets, the big, is it the pshat that, human intelligence is limited, Torah is infinite, so the Torah that's in our heads is sheker. It's something, based on, it has a little taste, like, right? Or, it's mamish, that or Ein Sof is still in our minds, even if it, what we have inside of our head is a little bit, runs way ahead of, what our minds could be typhus, but it's there. It's the same or. Right? So in Parshas Baloscha, there's a slew of midrashim about it's amazing how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's the makor of or, and he still tells us to light the menorah for him. And then you have to ask, what's the medrash bechlal amazed by? Rebbe Shalom also created all the cows, and yet we give him korbanos, and he cast it by any mitzvah. Rebbe Shalom doesn't need anything, and he created, and yet we do it for him. No, the kasha was from Dafka, the Or HaMenorah that represents the Rebbe Shalom's Or, and that's what it means. The Or is his, right? The Or is his. That our lighting the menorah is that his Or is by us. That's the Pella. So amongst the many midrashim that the Medrash brings is the following mashal. There was a pikach and a suma, a sighted man and a blind man, and they're walking together, and the sighted man leads the blind man everywhere. And then they get into home. It brings the blind man home, and the pikach says, are you home? You feel your table? Hadlik liyasaner. I want you to light a candle for me. And said, "You're my eyes." You make you a joke. It's like I should make light for you. You're my eyes. Shelo tachzik li tova. I don't want you to feel indebted to me. Right? So Kosh was called the Pikeach, and Am Yisrael is called the Suma. And Rav says, I want you to make light for me. So now take a look at the omek of the medrash, the mashal given, right? The blind man who can't see the light is still producing light that the sighted man could see and appreciate, right? That means an amazing thing, that when we learn Torah, or Machadish Chidushei Torah, it's much bigger than what we realize. We're the blind men. We're producing light that even we can't see. We just, the amount that we're conscious of is just, the chitzonis of the chitzonis of the chitzonis, but it's the same ore that the sighted man is getting hana from. Right? That's the unbelievable, inyan of Torah Shebaal Peh. It's the Rebbe Shem's light in our kalim. Right? So I'm going to ask Akash. You probably never heard this one before, right? Why is Chanukah 8 days? One day wasn't a nace. Right? Right?
It's a really good Akash. I've never heard that one.
Yeah, there you go. Right? Right. So I'm going to tell you a new mahalach in this. Right? What? Right? Right? But the human mind, right? The human mind, is it the etzem of thought? Essentially, is the human mind the etzem of thought, or is it a kli for thought? And I'm not just talking about the neurons. I'm talking about even the way of thinking, logic. Is logic the etzem of thought, or is logic a kli to hold thought? You want to think about it for a second?
Sounds like a clean, no?
What? You just guessed, right?
What does the
Yeah,
wood
but you're right.
Miriam say?
What?
What does the wood Miriam say?
If it's something that Hashem gave us, He gave us these kalim,
Right.
so it can't be the etzem.
So now-
Well,
Right.
at the same time, we know that we have Hashem coming out, and that is our mind, our ability to think. That sentient part of us is the chemical coming out.
Well, I'll tell you about thinking, like logic, like 1 + 1 = 2.
It's the weirdest part. One thing.
I'm always in the middle.
You're staying with office.
I want to be number 8.
Right?
He started talking about thought, and he's like, "Well, there's
This is
nothing I can contribute."
I don't understand the
What? You understand the question, sir?
No, I don't know the answer. I don't know what I think the answer is. I don't know.
No, I'm not talking about the neurons. How the neurons are
Right.
clear. I think about that's a thing. Logic, like the whole's the sum of the parts. Is that the etzem of
At
machshava?
the same time, logic is based on the rules of this world, and we can't imagine something that it goes against the nature of this world. So it can't be the etzem of thought. It can't be the etzem of reason. It's a kli that holds it. You'd have to say it's a kli that holds it, because meaning like the old notion of imagining a square circle, that kind of thing.
Right.
We can't be toifus that, because it's not something that works within the boundaries of our existence of this physical world.
So my not communal.
It's going to tie into the basis of kasha, I imagine.
Right. So the
Logical.
yeah. No, the Yevonim, they thought that logic is the etzem of machshava, and it's the etzem of reality, and therefore be all and end all, right? And therefore they think that what is logical is mukhrach. It must be. It must be, right? Yeah. Yeah, when science was science, right?
Follow the science.
Follow science, right? Anyway, right, and therefore they didn't believe in nisim. They believe, what seemed logical seemed mukhrach, right? Right. So if that's the way I think, then that must be the way it is, right? The machshava in the head is the etzem. Right, is the etzem adavar, right? That was their whole position, and that's why they were makhish nisim. or makhish hashgacha pratis, or makhish a lot of things because they thought, logic is, it is reality. It's logic is not a kli, right? It's not a tool to work with. It is the etzem of thought, which is the etzem dika description of reality, right? So now, interesting enough, already the Torah's merames, Chanukah is ushered in by all this, the whole story of Mechiras Yosef, says that when Yosef was approaching, Vayisnaklu oso lahamiso. Vayisnaklu, they plotted. So there's from non-art school publications. They point out that the Sforim Akdoshim might point out that right, that the root word is kli, right? I'm going to say it's bedafka because Alon is outside, right? And no one's allowed to tell him this vort, right? Oh. Just to make him feel really bad. But it's something that Nebuchadnezzar would enjoy. We have very little from Nassan Adler, right? We have very, very little, because he held that's also the right Chidushei Torah, if you remember why she right. But I once saw a very, very thin contrast of Likutim stuff in the name of Nassan Adler. And this obviously made a very big impression on the issue of Lo Yechli Gever Al Isha, Lo Yubash Gever Simas Isha. Right, so we're talking about the issue, she can't wear his, he can't carry his weapons, and he can't wear a dress, right? So he's a zokt there. Interesting. So it state in Ari, he brings that if a person Nebuch thinks about women all day, he comes back as in a Gilgal as a woman. Right, it's one of the owners. You have your mind on a woman all day? Yes.
Wow.
It's not too late.
Yes. From the Rizal.
From the Arizal. Wow. You think about women all day, your next couple will come back as a woman, right? So he says, no, based with this already, he wants to say, Lo yechli loshem machshava, kli. Lo yechli gever al isha. Let the machshava man not be on a woman. V'lo yobash gever said, and then that man won't be wearing a dress in his next Gilgal. Right.
Wow.
Right.
His life has changed. I bet she's going to get engaged soon.
Right.
That's how big that war was. Humongous.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, she said, quote, do not tell you.
You walk out, there are consequences.
Right. Named you a lot.
Right.
You heard enough of the top stuff.
You know what it is? It's when people from Woodmere show up, they come a bad influence on me.
Yes, sir.
I wonder why he's saying Bart while he's outside.
Yeah. Right. So and this really, this.
You know more about Woodmere.
So this is right. I want to hear. Chasdei Kreskis in his Sefer Or Hashem in the Hatzah asked the question. The Rambam counts Anochi Hashem Elokecha as a mitzvah to believe in God, right? The Bahag didn't count as a mitzvah; it's a mitzias. You believe or you don't believe. And he asked, he asked on the Rambam, how could it be a tzivui to think a certain way? The answer is, the Rambam already wrote in the Shmona Prokim in the second parak. There's bechira in the sichli. You're not mukhrach to think the way you think. It's not mukhrach. You decide the way you think. Lamasa, at the end of the day, when you accept something as emes or you reject something as sheker, that was a choice. Because with all the arguments in the world, if you like the idea, you'll accept it as emes, and with right, and with all and the same thing goes if you just, no matter how many proofs I bring you, if you don't want to believe, you'll reject, right? Machshava is not mukhrach; it's a kli. It's a kli, and it goes on logic also. It's a tool to measure up the world that we're meant to use. When it comes, to derech hateva, when if I have to, measure, the proper gvul of hishtadlus or how to do something, but it's only a kli. It's only a kli. It's not the etzem, right? Right. So now it's a kli for what? It's a kli for the or, right? Right. It's a kli for the or, and then again in non-art scroll material, right? So you talk about the or and the kalim, right? Extensively, right? The ruchnius is called or, and the gash is called the kli, and that's the great Jewish challenge, to put the or in kli, right? The kli should be a way to grab onto the or and bring the or, to where it isn't, and that's what the kli is moisif, a new application to the or, because the or used to be there, but you put in a kli, so you expanded the or to a new area, right? And that's what a ner is, right? Shraga b'tiara mayahanya. You don't need a candle by day, right? What does it help? It's already light. It's already light. You need a candle at night to dispel the darkness. This kli captures or, and could bring the or to the choshech and light it up, right? Right. But the Yevonim, and kayadua, when the kli is gover on the or, right? So so when the kli is gover, it's choshech, right? It obscures the or, right? And ultimately, it's not good for the kli, because when the kli totally obscures the or can't be there, then there's shvira sakelim, kayadua, right? But initially, before the point of no return, where there's a shvira, which is generally too late by then, initially the kli wants to be goiver over the or, right?
So I just have a question.
Yeah.
You say you're in mitzvah, the Torah or,
Right.
and mitzvah is the kli, and Torah is the
Right. Because the mitzvah
light.
refers to Torah Shabbat Peh, and the Goyen says it's on that pasuk. Ner mitzvah is Torah Shabbat Peh, and Torah or is Torah Shabbat. Torah Shabbat, God wrote it already. There's nothing for me to add. And that's the Indian. You learn Torah Shabbat by day and Torah Shabbat Peh by night. And so Kisvei Ari. It's right.
It's not. It's not fair.
It's only for tzvardim?
That's it. The ner, and that's what mitzvah is also. It's connected the or of Torah Shabbat Peh, right? But that's what mitzvahs are also. That the guf, which is a kli for the neshama, does the mitzvahs, right? The neshama can't do a mitzvah without the guf. So when the neshama comes down to earth to do the mitzvahs, you put the or in kalim, and it puts in the kalim of the guf, and the guf becomes immortal, right? And zochet olam haba, and it puts or into olam hazeh, and olam hazeh begins to, evolve, for lack of a better word, and become olam haba. It's to put the or in kalim. That's what mitzvahs are, and that's what the Torah Shabbat Peh is. And halacha is not halacha is not determined by what's written in the Chumash. There's not a single mitzvah that you could do kehilchasa based on the information in Chumash, not even bris milah. It doesn't say where to cut, right? Halacha is al pi the Torah Shabbat Peh, right? That's what puts the or. That's the or that goes into kalim. That's the mitzvahs, and that's why it's called ner mitzvah taka, right? And that's what the Rambam writes at the very beginning of his Hakdama, right? Right, that the look at a Torah v'amitzvah, Torah zu Torah v'hamitzvah zu Torah Shabbat Peh, zu pirusha, v'nitztavinu la'asos es ha'Torah al pi hamitzvah. Right, the ikar of the Torah should be al pi the mitzvah, which is the Torah Shabbat Peh, the pirush, right? So the mitzvah is connected, and that's what mitzvahs are also. The only mitzvah is to put the or of Torah in the kalim of the guf and of olam hazeh. That's why we got the Torah and the malachim didn't. If they would get the Torah, it would stay in heaven. That's what they said when they conceded Hashem, when they conceded to Moshe Rabbeinu, when he won the debate. Hashem Adonenu Ma'adir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz. B'chol Haaretz. It stays by us. It's Asher Tznohu T'chal HaShemayim. Hashem Adonenu Ma'adir B'chol Haaretz. That's what I say. Look, Chas He's a Shem Gadol V'Kadosh Ba'olamecha. It's Ma'adir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz. The Shem, which is the Torah, right? Which is the essence, right? Is Nizgala, it comes down into the kalim of the guf, it comes down into the kalim of the Metzias, right? And that's what that's what the Indian of a Beis Hamikdash is. It's a kli to hold the or, right? Most pronounced by the menorah, right? All the kalim, So you have to ask a question, Chanukah Samizbeach. Chanukah Samizbeach, right? They were renovating the Mizbeach during the days of Chanukah. Avnei Mizbeach sheshiksu ma'anshe Yavan, but we make a big deal out of the menorah. Right? Well, of course, we don't have a mizbeach bisman hazeh, right? But the main point was, it says, Vitimu kashmanim uminosar kankanim nasa nes lashoshanim b'nei bina Kaidua Bina is the Or of Torah, and the lower midas are called B'nai Bina, the Kalim, right? The 7 midas, the branches are the B'nai Bina. Right, but now it's recognized that they're B'nai Bina. But the point I want to make is Vitimu Kol Shmanim. They were talking about the whole Heichal. Vitimu Kol Shmanim, right? Because Shemen is Keneged Chochma. The Gemara says that the B'nai Tekol were very smart because they were Gilim B'Shemen Zayis, and that's where they brought the Or of the menorah from Tekor, which was 8 days away. It took 4 days there, 4 days, 8-day trip to go there and come back. That's why they needed to light for 8 days, because by the end of 8 days they had new Shemen from Tekor. Right, so Shevet is Keneged Chova. V'timu Kol Hashmanim, right, and the tumah that they put in the Shmanim, right, is this mistake, right, thinking, logic, is that etzem machshava or just a kli to hold the real machshava of Torah? We're supposed to use logic in our lumbus. We have to realize that Torah is even above that. Right? How much bigger is Torah? We're blind to it. We're the Summa that can't even see the full extent of the Or that he's handling. But we're handling Or that the Pikeach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is Nene from and gets Nachas Ruach from. We're handling that. We have that in our Kalim. They went with the Kli, and when the Kli is Goiver over the Or, there's Choshech, and that's what Chazal say, Choshech Zu Yavan. Because when the Kli is Goiver on the Or, right? So, then there's Choshech, right? Because the Kli obscures the Or. Right? They got totally, hyped over the kalim that they developed. When they're just a tool, to hold, a higher Or. So it's a v'noser kankanim. Kankan is a kli, right? Because I'll say al tistako b'kankan el b'masha b'tocho. Right? Don't get hung up with the kan, because you can have a yoshan shafilu chodash ein bo. Right? Don't look at the kankan. Right? So kankan, so we said before, kli itself is lashon machshava. But what does it say? The Gemara says in Eruvin, there was a Talmud in Yaveh could be mitayr the sheretz bekuf nun ta'amim. You give 150 reasons to show that a sheretz is tahor, which is against the Torah. They can prove to you. Now, of course, if you could say 150 shkarim, you could at least say chotch, 150 ta'amim of why a sheretz should be tameh. That's kankan. Right? You could say 150 lies, So koshka, you could say 150 truths, right? But the whole thing is just called kankan, right? But uminosar kankanim doesn't just mean that this was the one left over, but noisar miloshem mosar, extra. What's like mosar, not just what overflows. Minosar kankanim nasanes lashoshanim, right? This kankan, and that's now we get back to the Beis Yosef's kasha. It's nes pach hashemen. This kankan, that its dimensions was only gashmius, the connection can only hold shemen for one night. They poured from it for 8 days. This kankan was bigger on the inside than on the outside. And that's why all 8 days are a nes, because it had 8 times the volume perpetually. It was a nes, and that's meduik, nes pach hashemen, right? And that was the whole thing, the godless of Torah Shabbat Peh, right? The godless of Torah Shabbat Peh, that we have a pach shemen that seemingly could only hold finite information, and infinite Or, noiser kankanim, is inside this kli. Like that pach shemen miraculously held 8 days worth of oil, even though its dimensions were only one. So it was perpetually a nes. It held that pach shemen all 8 days held much more than its physical dimensions. They kept on pouring out of it, and that's the Or of Torah Shabbat Peh. That's in the kalim of our moach, right? And that's what's alluded to in the etzem mitzias of ner. Ki ner mitzvah v'torah Or, right? But it also says ner Hashem nishmas adam. And the Dorshei Rishum, and again, non-art school books have said, right, that Nephesh, right, is ner psila shemen, right? That and state again in these non-art school publications that the right, that kaidu is without getting into this minor details, but generally speaking, in the big bits, there's Nephesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Guf, right? The fire is connected to neshama. which is mamish connected the or Torah, right? And that's connected to the neshama. That's what the pasuk says. Unishmas shakai tivinain. You get havana, right? From the neshama. You don't really learn Torah with your mind. You learn Torah with your neshama. We can understand Torah Eloki because we have a neshama, right? But what keeps it connected? There's the psila, which runs from the flame all the way down to the bottom of the glass. That's connected the ruach. That bridges, between the neshama and the nephesh, which is in the guf, and that's the shemen. The nephesh fills the guf. It's called shiduv gufa, and that's the shemen that fills the kli, and the ner per se is the kli, right? And that's the guf, right? And that's the simcha. Whatever is good about whatever they've done. Whatever culture they have, whatever science, when there was science, right? Right? Whatever, them, and all their vaccines, right? Right? Whatever is good, that thing they call mada, right? Mada, right? Whatever. No, but we don't. But except that it's not a partnership. It's not a synthesis. It's not, right? Whatever is good about it, whatever is true about it, which a lot of it, isn't, right? Sometimes the narrative, which also it's an interesting point. Hesber, when you explain something. That's just a narrative. There's a thing that you're trying to explain. There's the explanation. The hesber is a kli. So we say hesberim. What's chazaka? What's migu? But all those hesberim are just a kli. And it's not. And it's not. So why did it take the Rosh Yeshiva to say it was Neimar's kol chatayna? Why didn't the Rishonim already say this black and white? Because the hesber is just a kli. And every door has its own kalim, and the Rishonim didn't need these types of terms because they didn't think with these types of terms, right? So the hesber is just a kli, and every door has its own kalim, there's the seichel of the door, but it's just a kli. But what's common, every door has its own kalim, right? And that's what differentiates one door from another, but it's all the same or. All the same or in kalim mikalim shonim, right? And that just shows the godless of the or. They could fit into this kli, it could miraculously fit in this kli, miraculously fit into a different kli, and every door puts up different kalim, but it's all the same or haTorah that we got at say. It's all the same infinite or, just sitting. Every door gives it new kalim, to be mamshechit to gashmias and to be misalik to choshech, right? Of the left, right? The misalik, the woke, In every door, we chip away at it. You give new kelim for it to fill, to be masalik. To be masalik. The choshech that's there, right? And whatever's emes about it will be a kli for the or, and whatever's sheker about it, the or is deicha. All right, and that's what we want to do. So we have to work for the, to the gilui of or on the neshama, the gilui of or Torah, and to just to put in my own 2 cents. And that's what connected their zaydim, that they make a shita, a thought out shita, a plan, diabolical plan, right? Connected as oskei sarasecha, but it's oskei sarasecha, is that our Asik HaTorah is that to use our whole machshot to be osuk for sarasecha, right? To be mamid kalim, to hold the or HaTorah, and that's how we'll win. And of course we've got nowhere else to go except the yeshivas, but we do have to work on that, that to understand that the Reb Chaim, the Reb Shimon, that's a kli, right? And it's a kli to hold or Torah, right? And if for some reason, just like the Lomdus arose 100 years ago, because it shtim, people liked it, it clicked, it fit in the kalim, of how the people were thinking, right? So that was the way, and that was the godless. They put in new kalim. Because the old kalim, we don't use these kalim anymore, for whatever reason, right? All right, so maybe we have to continue the process of avada. We've got nowhere else to go. except being Oiske Sorasecha, but maybe there is a challenge to be Mamid Nu Kalim for this door to hold the Or. So when Be'ez Hashem, when we do that, right, we will, right? Right, that's my take on it. Right, that's my take on it. With him, be Mamid Nu Kalim to hold the Or, right? And with that, we will, will be Zocher when all the Kalim that need to be filled will be filled. That's when we'll have Or Chodesh Al Tzion Toyer. The new Or will be Nizgal because it already has been, all the Kalim have been filled, and that's when we go L'Tzion Brina, but we're not going to go L'Tzion Brina until Let's Go Brandon.